why do we do what we do? I mean, really, so much of our life is just driven by these forces we barely understand, right? These routines that just run on autopilot. In this explainer, we're going to dive deep into Charles Duhigg's masterpiece, The Power of Habit, to uncover the hidden wiring of our daily lives and figure out what truly makes us tick. Our story kicks off with a real medical mystery. A man, who we'll call Eugene Pauly, had this viral infection that basically just destroyed the parts of his brain responsible for memory. He was left with profound amnesia. I mean, he couldn't remember a conversation he'd had a minute ago. If you asked him to draw a simple map of his own house, he was completely lost. And yet, somehow, Eugene was doing the impossible. Even with his memory wiped clean, he was forming new routines. This was the paradox, the puzzle that stumped scientists and ended up unlocking a revolutionary new way of understanding the human brain. So, to figure out how this could possibly be happening, researchers started just observing him, watching his daily life. They were hunting for clues, for any little hint of some hidden system that was letting his damaged brain navigate the world on autopilot. And look, the severity of his condition was just stark. If you asked him, "Hey, Eugene, where's the kitchen?" he'd just look around, totally confused. He had no conscious map of his own home. He was basically a stranger in his own house. But here's the twist. If you asked him what he'd do if he felt hungry, something absolutely incredible would happen. He'd get up, walk straight to the kitchen, open the exact right cabinet, and pull out a jar of nuts. He was acting on a memory he didn't even know he had. He was running on pure habit. Eugene's case, it turns out, wasn't just a curiosity. It was a window into a part of our brain that operates completely beneath our conscious awareness. And it led scientists at MIT to finally crack the code of how our habits are formed and how they really, really work. What they discovered was this simple but incredibly powerful pattern they called the habit loop. It's a 3-step process that our brain runs through every single time a habit fires off. And the whole point of this loop? Efficiency. It's the brain's way of letting your conscious mind take a break while the autopilot takes over. And what they found is that this powerful loop is built on 3 surprisingly simple parts. First, you got the cue. That's the trigger. For Eugene, it was the feeling of hunger. Second, you have the routine, which is the action itself, walking to the kitchen. And finally, the reward, eating those nuts. Cue, routine, reward. This simple little loop is the neurological foundation for everything from brushing your teeth to compulsively checking your phone. And get this, because this perfectly shows the brain's real goal. In experiments where they had rats learning a maze, their brains were buzzing with activity at first. But once they learned the route to the chocolatey reward, boom, their mental activity just plummeted. The habit became so ingrained they barely had to think at all. Habits are just mental shortcuts, the brain's way of saving energy. But there's a secret ingredient that makes this whole loop spin. It's not just about getting the reward, it's about the craving for the reward. Your brain starts to anticipate that good feeling before you even get it. It's that craving for the sugar high, the nicotine buzz, or the social validation that powers the habit loop and makes it so incredibly hard to resist. Okay, so if these loops are so powerful and so automatic, are we just stuck with them forever? Well, the answer is a definite no, because understanding the loop isn't just for fun, it's the key to hacking it. And this is the million-dollar question, right? How do you fight against a neurological process that is literally designed to be effortless and automatic? Well, the answer isn't to fight it head-on. You have to be clever. You know, most of us try to change a bad habit using sheer willpower. We just say, okay, that's it. I'm going to stop doing this. And let's be honest, most of the time that fails spectacularly. The craving kicks in and the old loop just takes over. The successful approach is totally different. You don't stop the loop, you redesign it. This, right here, is the golden rule. You figure out the cue that triggers your habit, and you identify the reward your brain is actually craving. You keep those 2 things exactly the same. The only thing you change is the routine in the middle. You just swap out the negative behavior for a better one that delivers a similar reward. You know, Duhigg himself used this to break his own daily cookie habit. The cue was that mid-afternoon slump around 3:30, but he realized the reward he was craving wasn't actually the cookie, it was the temporary distraction and the social time he got from going to the cafeteria. So he kept the cue, an alarm at 3:30 p.m., but he changed the routine. Instead of getting a cookie, he'd go chat with a coworker for 10 minutes. He got this same reward, a social break, and the cookie habit just faded away. Now, some habits are just built different. They're more powerful than others. They don't just change one behavior, they set off a chain reaction that can transform, well, pretty much everything. These are what we call keystone habits. Think of a keystone in an arch. It's that central stone at the top that holds all the other stones in place. A keystone habit works exactly the same way. For instance, studies show that people who start exercising regularly also start, almost by accident, eating better and becoming more productive at work. That one single habit creates a structure for all these other good habits to flourish. One of the most famous examples of a keystone habit in action comes from the corporate world. Back in 1987, a guy named Paul O'Neill took over Alcoa, a company that was really struggling. At his very first meeting with investors, they were all expecting to hear about profit margins and cost cutting. He didn't say a word about any of that. Instead, he announced a single priority, a shocking one, that left the entire room in just stunned silence. What was this one thing he was going to focus on to turn the entire company around? That was it. Worker safety. He promised to make Alcoa the safest company in America with a goal of 0 injuries. Wall Street thought he was absolutely insane, but O'Neill understood something really deep about how organizations change. See, to get to 0 injuries, departments had to start communicating better. Managers actually had to listen to workers on the floor. Inefficient processes that were dangerous had to be completely redesigned. That obsessive focus on one keystone habit rebuilt the entire company's culture from the ground up. And the result? By the time O'Neill retired, Alcoa's market value had skyrocketed. So what does all this mean for you? I mean, from Eugene Pauly's damaged brain to the boardroom of a giant corporation, the lesson is exactly the same. Habits are not your destiny. They're just code. And once you understand the mechanics, you become the programmer. You get the power to become the author of your own routines. So here it is, your practical toolkit for change. First, become a scientist of your own behavior. Really figure out the cue, the routine, and the reward for a habit you want to change. Then start experimenting. Try out different routines that might deliver a similar reward. And finally, if you want to make big changes, don't try to change everything all at once. Focus on one keystone habit, like making your bed every morning or tracking what you eat, and just let that positive momentum build. Because once you really see your habits as a formula, a recipe that you can tweak, a fundamental shift happens. You realize that the patterns that run your life, they're malleable. They can be understood, they can be dismantled, and they can be replaced. The only question left is, where will you begin?